Hi, everyone. Ed Bixby here from the Global Green Burial Alliance, and I'm pleased to say that I have a wonderful guest today that's going to talk about pre-arrangement. So this is Ask the Expert, our live stream. I'd like to introduce Patricia Kimie. Patricia Kimie is the founder of Pre-Plan with Patricia and works as a pre-arrangement counselor at Benito and Azzaro, an established funeral home in Santa Cruz County, California. Patricia has been providing end-of-life planning services since 2015, specializing in green burial planning. Welcome, Patricia.
Thanks, Ed. How are you today?
Great to have you here. Oh,
Thank
it's
you.
great to have you. Today we're going to talk a little bit to the providers and to the consumers that follow us about the benefits of pre-arrangement, which we all know is very, very important. But a lot of times people don't understand why that is so important to the families and the funeral provider. So to start off, could you explain what a pre-arrangement is and guide us and our audience through the process?
Absolutely. So pre-arranging is pretty much what people do with their estate planning, with their estate, but except they're pre-planning for their end-of-life options and their desires, basically. I find that working with people, there's 3 different categories of people making arrangements. I work with people making arrangements for themselves, and typically because they are worried about leaving this burden, either the financial burden or emotional burden, onto their children. Or maybe they just want to make sure that they get what they want. Things go as they wish, meaning if they want to be buried, they're worried that their kids may cremate them, or the other way around. And then the other side that I see is are people that have no children, have no spouse, have no children. So it's really important that they get it done. It just brings some peace of mind. Another category are people that are making arrangements for somebody else, say a family member, a loved one. Maybe they're getting older, not necessarily ill, but say that person travels a lot and they're worried that maybe their 80-year-old mom might fall and she won't be around. So they want to put something in place so that they don't have to worry about it. And then last category is I work with a lot of people who are in hospice care. And if that is you, or you do know someone that's in hospice care, I think it's really important that you call your local funeral home or me and discuss those arrangements before it's too late and you really can't ask them what they want. It gets very emotional when people are in a hospice situation. And lately I've been dealing with a lot of hospice situations. It seems like the holidays is a time when we lose a lot of people. And unfortunately, some people wait to the very last minute and then they're emotionally even more traumatized. So I hope that answered your question. Pre-planning is getting all of your ducks in a row, especially for those people that like to be organized. It's really just making those arrangements so that things get done.
Absolutely. No, that's a great explanation. And you're absolutely right. It's caring not only for yourself, but for your loved ones in their time of need. And probably a lot of people don't realize that if you pre-arrange, you get something at today's prices. So if you do it when you're healthy, certainly you're saving your family that financial burden in the future. So I commend what you do, Patricia, and it's great that you're able to talk to the consumers here today and the providers about the importance of this. So that would bring me to for the consumer end of it in particular. When you pre-plan, we've talked a little bit about the benefits of the pre-planning, but like, what would the process look like essentially if someone were to come in and sit down with you and say, okay, Patricia, this is what I'd like to do, but where do I begin, or how do we begin this process?
That's a great question. I have a lot of people who come into my office or even have a phone call and they've never gone through this process. Or some people have gone through the process, but they have blanked out all the details because it was a little traumatizing because their loved one did not pre-plan. The first thing I do is I really like to get to know somebody. I like that person to feel comfortable with me. It's a very personal process. And these people are going to be trusting me with information about themselves and their family. So I get to know that person. And then we start talking about maybe their family, what they have done. And then I start to get an idea of what they really want. It's interesting because a lot of people come in and they're not exactly sure. So I start talking to them about a lot of options, and green burial does come up in that process. And a lot of people are very surprised that, that's an option these days with the environmentally friendly options. So once I get kind of an idea of what they're looking for, and I ask the person to walk me through exactly what they're thinking that they want, the majority of people say, I want to be picked up, brought into the care of the funeral home. I want my death certificate to be processed, and maybe I might want an obituary. Then I want to be cremated or maybe buried. For those who want to be buried, they go into other details. Sometimes we get very detailed: flowers, music, location, religion, church, all of that. For others, there aren't those kind of details. And then I start talking to them about pricing. So I'm very transparent. I believe that the consumer deserves to have all of the pricing given to them upfront. So there's no hidden fees. I talk to them about all the details. I create an estimate. We go over the estimate, and then I start to discuss the value of actually making a funded prearrangement, meaning that they can prepay. Now, some people don't want to pay for the entire arrangement in full. So we do have payment options. Now, in the process that I use, the funeral homes that I'm working with have selected to use an insurance company to hold the funds for the prearrangement. Let me backtrack a little bit. It's actually illegal for the funeral home to accept money directly unless they're rendering services. So if they're offering a pre-arrangement and the family would like to prepay it, which will give them the benefit of locking in those costs, the cost of the funeral home costs, not the death certificate and obituary and all of that, because they can't control those costs. Then our particular funeral home uses an insurance company to just hold the funds. Now, some people get confused about that, but if you think about it, what happens if an earthquake or a tornado or some act of God hits the funeral home and they're out of commission for 2 years and they can't perform? What happens if for some reason the funeral home goes out of business? This has happened in some other cities in California, and unfortunately, some consumers were scammed. So it's really important that the consumer knows you don't write that check to the funeral home unless someone's already passed away and you're actually getting services now. So we go through the funding process, and then I reiterate and go through it one more time, and then I explain to them that they will receive a policy in the mail. And the benefit of all this is now they're done. All they have to do is tell their children what they have done. And their children now, or the next of kin, will just have to make a phone call and maybe come in and sign some documents or decide on dates if there's going to be a burial. It really streamlines the process. What I tell my cremation clients is this: if we go through the process, you sign your authorization forms, then all your kids have to do is make a phone call so that their time is spent with their family rather than being in a room with a funeral director, someone that they've never met before, having to talk about all of this and answering questions when they really don't want to be there.
No, absolutely. That's very good advice. And just so the audience knows, this really pertains to any and all funeral arrangements. Of course, we support environmentally friendly options, but of course we also support our families that choose any option. So it's important, no matter what you do, to think ahead, because it's caring for your loved ones at their time of need. So that is really good, sound advice. And also, I'd like to let everyone know that, like Patricia had just mentioned, on the funeral fund, when you purchase the property itself, it will be held in a deed. So essentially it's a land transfer type of cash and carry transaction. So a portion of that can be done at the time of, and then you can use that plot as you see fit in the future. So that would bring me to a question that, you've kind of touched on some of these, but so, if one were to pre-plan their own funeral, and then, or I'm sorry, if they were not to pre-plan it, what would it look like from the family's perspective? And you touched on it a little bit, but, if they did not prearrange, what kind of situation could it be, and what kind of comfort and ease could the prearrangement itself bring to the family to avoid, the at-need situation?
Right. That's a good question. So I hold seminars and I ask the audience, how many of you have children? Most people raise their hand. And I say, keep your hand up if you have more than one or two. They keep their hand up. Then the next question is, and they get along and they have all the same ideas and they make the decisions the same way, correct? Like they believe in the same thing. And then they laugh, because in most family situations, kids don't agree on things. So if children aren't going to agree on, say, what's going to be served in Thanksgiving, it might be a difficult decision or time, or if they're trying to decide what to do with mom's body. Especially what I've found is working at the funeral home, you have some cases where, and in fact, I had this situation where the mother raised 5 children as devout Catholics. And when she was making her arrangements, she said, I don't want to be buried. I want to be cremated now. But unfortunately, the children told her, no, Mom, we're not going to let you be cremated. So that was the important part of making her prearrangement, because we wrote all over the file and put legal documents in her file that her children could not bury her. Now, what does it look like if you don't have a prearrangement? Well, someone has to show up at the funeral home. Someone has to make decisions. Hopefully you're all on the same page. If for some reason your family situation is a little bit rocky and people aren't agreeing on things, then it's a really good idea to make arrangements. Unfortunately, I've seen some families argue, not only over the decisions, but over the financial part of it. And it always seems that the child that makes the least amount of money wants the most expensive casket. Another thing that I have found is that with the green burial process, now that I've been really involved with it, I find that a lot of people who really want to have a green burial want to do the prearrangement process. And the reason is because most of them tell me, if I don't do this, my family's just going to cremate me, because it's easier, or so people think. It's simple. It's a simple process. But fortunately, when you have family members that do want to honor mom or dad's wishes, then they have to take the time to find a plot. They have to sometimes take the time to find a funeral home. What do you do? If mom fell outside, who's at the coroner's office now? Now what? Now you have limited time to find a funeral home. Not only find a funeral home, but make some decisions with your, those left behind, and hopefully you'll agree on something.
No, absolutely. That's great advice. And you said something many people don't think about, and I'm going to elaborate a little bit. When something's paid for, you have the peace of mind to know you're going to get what you want, of course, like you just said. And it's kind of ironic when people have to pay for things, then everyone, like you said, has an opinion. But the minute they realize it's paid for, no one has a problem with it at all. So I hate to jest, but when it comes down to that, people usually follow suit when mom or dad or whatever their loved one is makes that arrangement. So that would bring me to, are there any steps of the funeral service that you can't prearrange? To what extent can you pre-plan? So can you prearrange a monument, for instance, or other things that go beyond it? I think you touched on that earlier, but just a little more of an elaboration.
Of course. So I mentioned earlier that I like to be transparent with my clients. So when I create an estimate, there's two sides to the estimate. There is what is called a guaranteed side. And those items are items that can be locked in if you make a pre-arrangement and you prepay it, meaning those services coming from the funeral home and merchandise purchase. Now, that's not all the costs involved. Other costs involved will be death certificates, an obituary. If you have a burial plot, the opening and closing for that burial plot, the monument and setting fee, or some people call it a marker. The clergy, say that you're going to have a pastor, a priest, a rabbi, or have a church service. All that I just mentioned, you can't lock in. However, when I make a pre-arrangement, I ask the family, especially, it's typically parents that I'm dealing with, would you like this to be a complete arrangement, as complete as possible, so that your children have the most minimal out-of-pocket costs when you pass away? Or do you want to just leave all these costs to your kids when you pass away? Because say that a church service costs $1,000, well, it's $20.25, and they're 70 years old. If they live to 90, that's 20 years. There's already going to be an inflation, to that fee. But if you put some money aside, it won't be as drastic for the family to pay at the end. Now, I hope that answered your question as far as items that you can't prepay.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that's what's important to know is, like, you're absolutely right. You are saving money by prearranging today if you're in good health, but there will be costs in the future associated with it. And that's very good for people to understand that. So there's a definite benefit to the prearrangement, but there will be some costs associated depending on how much longer you do exist on this planet. So it's really, you want to live forever, but no one does, as we all know. So you just plan for the future for those particular costs. So no, that was exactly what I wanted to know. Thanks, Patricia. And I think what some of our our viewers would want to know, because we do deal with a lot of the environmental options, would it be that pre-planning is even more important for individuals who wish to have possibly a green burial? I mean, this would be a perspective question, of course, but how would you feel about that, knowing what you know about green or natural burial? Do you think it's even more important for a family to really speak to a professional like yourself before they make these decisions?
Absolutely. I get phone calls probably at least 2 to 3 times a week from people just asking questions, educating yourself, or I can help educate you on the process and what's involved. And even I'll just bring myself into the equation. I originally wanted to be cremated, and I'm in the business. It seems simple. I really don't have any high religious connections. So I thought that would be the easiest way. And when I met you in 2018 and learned about this process, there's just no way I would do anything other than having a green burial. And I think the process, I do my best to make this process as easy and streamlined as possible, and actually fun. And I think that, again, the pre-planning process just makes it so much easier for the family. I don't think it does your family any justice by putting on your estate plan, I want a green burial, and that's it. Because there's pieces involved. And when we can go through those pieces, like, for example, would I want to be buried in a basket casket made out of bamboo? Or would I just want to be in a bamboo or cotton shroud? My kids know that I want a green burial, but if I didn't write anything down, they wouldn't know that I want to be buried in a purple silk shroud. But now they do know that. And they're happy that I put something together, because now they know what mom wants. And they just have to make that phone call. Of course, they don't like to talk about this, but it is inevitable that we all will have to face these decisions. But I would say that, like earlier, I mentioned that the majority of my green burial clients do wish to proceed with the pre-arrangement. And I find that some people are still not aware that you can do a pre-arrangement. You can actually do this ahead of time. And there's so many benefits, but I think the biggest one is the peace of mind that it gives you while you're alive, and your children or those left behind, your executor, your aunt, your sister, your brother, that you've made up your mind, you made a decision, and you took care of it on the financial level. So also making the plot or deciding on the plot. Some people these days, they live in other cities, sometimes different states. And if you are wanting a green burial, it would be great for you to actually choose the plot so that your family doesn't have to scramble, fly out and do that for you. So I think that when people wrap their arms around the green burial process, I find that when people come on my tours at Personal Cemetery in Half Moon Bay, I see their faces light up. I have accompanied a lot of my clients in the Santa Cruz area to the local cemeteries, and a lot of them, I just don't see that it's not a fun process. They have their head down. They really don't want to be there. They just want to get it over with and leave. And when people walk onto the property at Personal Cemetery, it's almost like they become a kid again. We're out in nature. The hawks are flying over. The birds are chirping. The wildflowers are blooming. It is a different experience. And I think the more people that are exposed to it will realize and probably do what I did. And that's change your mind to, we call it, cremation converts over to green burial. In fact, my mother also did that too. So we will be both buried at Personal Cemetery at some point, hopefully many years from now. And like I told my last client, as we were walking around the property, I said, she's over there and I'm over there. We're near each other, but not next door. So I thought that was kind of funny. Anyhow, so for the pre-planning process, I think that I just want to reiterate that waiting, it's interesting how many 90-year-olds I've been working with, and I think it's wonderful that they're still healthy and vibrant. And I just want to reiterate that if you know what you really want, if you are adamant about being cremated or you want to be buried or whatever your decision is, then the pre-arrangement will lock that cost in. Not only lock the cost in, but at least get it down on paper. So in case there is an accident or something happens, your family has something to look at and know your wishes, to carry out your wishes. Because that is, it pains me to see families come into my office in tears saying, we didn't have a chance to ask Dad what he wanted, or Mom what she wanted. So that's my 2 cents. One thing that Ed just stepped out for a second here. We were going to mention the funeral home side. I have worked with several funeral homes, and one thing that I would love to see more of from the funeral home directors is to maybe make some recommendations of green burial or learn about it. I have been working with people throughout the Bay Area who have told me that they've called several funeral homes, and the funeral homes will say, oh, we don't know what green burial is, or what are you talking about? And I think that that it would be in their best interest to learn about this, what we call a movement, which is really going back to what grandma or great grandma and grandpa used to be doing, is being buried directly in the ground, no vault. And so I think that it would be a very smart business decision to educate yourself and your staff about green burial, so that when people call you, you actually are somewhat aware that that option exists. And in fact, I have a lot of cremation clients, or clients who originally chose to be cremated, what I would call upgrade to green burial. So I think that we're going to see more and more of that as time passes and as we start to educate the community and people across the globe. It's already happening. And that is my goal, is to offer as many community service events and seminars and something like this to spread the word. If you're on right now, then I would encourage you to share this once it goes on to the recorded availability to your friends and family who might find this information very valuable to themselves and their loved ones. Because as I mentioned, we all know somebody probably who is getting their estate planning done. If you're over the age of 50, especially at that age range, 50 and 60, people are getting their estate planning done and starting to talk about this subject. Ed, you have any more questions? No, looks like we lost him. Anyway, I have a website. It is Pre-Plan with Patricia. Pretty easy to find, www.preplanwithpatricia. And I have an events page that also has the dates and times of my upcoming tours. So if you are in the Bay Area or in the Santa Cruz and Monterey areas, please check that out or reach out to me and we can discuss this. If you're out of the area, please feel free to reach out to me. I had someone call me from Seattle about a month ago. They found me somehow, just asking some basic questions, and they wanted to know what to ask the funeral director because they were worried about going into the office and not knowing if they would be taken advantage of, and they just wanted to have all the answers that they could possibly get. Okay, Ed, he's outdoors now.
Hi, Patricia, if you can hear me, I've had the worst, I've been getting dropped. So I apologize, but I will tell you, you did a wonderful job. I could hear everything you said. I just could not reconnect. So thanks again. We at the Global Green Burial Alliance really appreciate all you.
Well, Ed, I can't hear you, but I appreciate you as well and what you've done. I think you have done an amazing job of expanding this vision that you have. And if I could just hear you, it would be great to share what your vision is, because I know it's huge.
Thanks, Patricia. We appreciate it. See you next time.
See you
Appreciate
later.
all you've done. And everyone, please visit Patricia's website. She does a great job, and looking forward to the next one without the technical difficulties that we've experienced. But you did a great job. Thanks, Patricia.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Take care.
See you, everybody.
Bye-bye.